What's up, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Isaiah, and I am your homeless hero, guys. I'm one of the homeless heroes, right? One of the 1/4 of the homeless heroes, should I say? Founder and um, the brains behind it, if you will. But I want to just thank you guys, number one, for tuning in the other day when we did our live. I hadn't done a live in quite some time, and I wanted to actually address some of the issues that's been going on with the Trump administration as relates to um, clearing out these encampments. These encampments in Washington D.C. They've been doing some mass sweeps of these homeless encampments and just kind of ridding DC of the homeless problem and the population. And the question that I asked was, is it helpful or is it harmful? So I had a video about this and I did a live stream because I wanted to hear directly from all of you guys what you thought. And America has spoken. I got a lot of comments after the live dropped, and I've been spending the last couple of days of actually just replying to each one of the comments. By the way, guys, if you drop a comment, if you leave a comment of any type, whether it's positive or negative, I'm going to always either respond or I'm going to make sure that I acknowledge it because I appreciate it. But I wanted you guys' feedback just to kind of get an idea of whether or not you thought that it was something that was helpful or harmful. When I say helpful or harmful, I mean helpful for the city, for the state, for the country, for the homeless individuals. Is this going to be something that's going to be helpful for them, or is it going to potentially be harmful for them as well? And the vast majority of you guys thought that it was going to be helpful for everybody involved. I'm not saying that I totally agree. I'm not saying that I really disagree. And that's one of the things is that it's a very, very, very delicate and touchy situation and balance when it comes to the homeless situation because there isn't really a direct path to be able to resolve the issue. So there's some things about it that you guys brought up in the comments that I thought was really good about how it could potentially be helpful. And then there was a few of you guys who kind of stood on the other side of the fence and then thought that it was kind of infringing upon their rights and that it could be harmful to those individuals as well. But I wanted to make sure I addressed it. And then I said that I was going to follow up and do another live, which we're doing today, which is basically just talking about Trump giving homeless people an ultimatum. So it's saying shelter or jail. So the thing is this legal? And if so, is it right? And I want you guys dropping those comments and let me know what you think. Is it legal or is it right? Ultimatum, So basically, the Trump administration, they deployed a lot of individuals to go and be able to sweep all the encampments on in Washington, D.C. And they're basically saying, hey, listen, here are your choices. Your choices is this. You can either go to a shelter or you can go to jail. Those are your options. And it's a very forceful way of being able to do something. But a lot of people believe that in order to be able to get these people on track and get them off of the streets and back into society, is they have to be pushed. They have to be forced to be able to do this into these situations and these rehabilitation situations and things like that. So my question is it legal for him to be able to actually present an ultimatum like this to the people in the homeless community, right? To American citizens, saying that if you don't get off the streets and go into a shelter, then you're going to go to jail. And then even if it is, the question is it the right thing to do? So I want to address these things in order. Number one, starting with, is it legal? All right. So is this a legal thing to be able to do? So I pulled this up for you guys to be able to see, and we'll read through this together. It says, legally, President Trump cannot order the mass incarceration of homeless people in Washington, D.C. And advocates argue that doing so would violate constitutional rights. However, recent federal actions and the 2024 Supreme Court ruling have created legal pathways for municipalities to clear encampments and impose penalties like fines or jail time on people who refuse to move. So here's a breakdown of the legal and political landscape. Federal directives, Executive Order 14321 in July of 2025, President Trump signed an executive order titled Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets. This order directs the Attorney General to take all necessary steps to remove homeless encampments. So this says all necessary steps. Now, I don't know about you, but in the last live that I had, I talked about the fact that these homeless people are much more likely to be victims of crimes, to actually be able to commit these crimes, be perpetrators of them. And most of the crimes that they have committed are are survival crimes, right? They're not violent crimes or anything that's significant. So when you start using verbiage like any means necessary, this isn't a violent necessarily group of individuals. Now, I was chatting back and forth with somebody from Portland, Oregon, who was saying that their homeless communities down there, not only are they vast, all right, but on top of it, that they are kind of, they can be confrontational at times, and they can be problematic. And that's a very different experience than what I have here in Las Vegas. The people here are pretty docile. I mean, it's almost to a point to where it's easy to look over them and not really address them, right? But by the same token, there's so many of them that it's obvious and apparent that there is a problem situation. But my point is that they don't really come up to you and beg. They don't really ask you for anything. They stay to themselves. They don't really bother you. I'm not saying that there is no criminal activity as a result of them, because again, there are survival crimes. People trying to survive. They're trying to eat. They're trying to, survive like you and I. But by the same token, I don't feel unsafe, and I stay downtown, right in the heart of where the majority of the homeless individuals are pushed, and I don't feel unsafe at any given time. Let's read a little bit more. So this says that encampment removals in August 2025, the White House announced that federal and local law enforcement, including the National Park Service, will strictly enforce existing laws to clear homeless encampments in D.C. So this means that there are already some laws that are in place, but they just haven't been enforced over time, and now they're looking to strictly enforce them. The threat of penalties. White House Press Secretary Caroline stated that homeless individuals would be offered shelter and services, but those who refuse could face fines or jail time. So here's your choice. Do you want to get off the streets or do you want to go to jail, right? So go to where we tell you to go or go to jail, right? Here's some of the key legal precedents. The city of Grants Pass versus Johnson. So it said Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court's June 2024 decision in Grants Pass versus Johnson determined that criminalizing camping on public property, including sleeping, does not constitute cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment, even when no shelter is available. And then it says this ruling gives municipalities more legal authority to enforce encampment bans in the context of DC's federal lands. It weakens the legal argument that individuals cannot be punished for simply sleeping outside when they have nowhere else to go. So if you don't see the play here, what's happening is that legally he can't do this, but there's a loophole that they're finding where they can actually justifiably and legally within the letter of the law be able to get away with doing it. And just repurposing and renaming what it is. Instead of saying that they're homeless, is saying that they're basically camping out, right? So it says the legal and ethical challenges. So it's protected status in D.C. The D.C. Human Rights Act protects individuals from discrimination based on their homeless status. It prohibits discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations, but its applicability to encampment sweeps remains untested in this new federal context. Violation of rights. Advocacy groups like the ACLU and local DC organizations have criticized the plan as unlawful, inhumane, and counterproductive. They argue that jailing individuals who have no housing violates their rights and fails to solve the root causes of homelessness. That's one of my biggest issues. So when I was talking about the helpful or harmful, when I was bringing up things, one of the things that I said, is it harmful? I feel like because of the fact that when we start focusing on just ridding the city streets of these homeless individuals, these people who are displaced, we're really not getting to the root of the problem. And you can't sit here and convince me that there's tens of thousands of people that are homeless, and it's all because of poor decision making, gambling, drugs, and mental illness. There's a root to this problem, and we're not getting to it when we're expending our time, our money, our efforts, our resources, and all of our energy towards just locking people up or kicking them off the streets, right? So we're not getting to the root of the problem. All right, it says inadequate resources. So critics also question whether there are enough shelter beds and adequate services available to accommodate everyone being displaced. DC officials have said that they have expanded capacity, but housing advocates express skepticism. So then that's the next thing. The next thing is that, okay, we have all these hundreds or we have all these thousands of homeless individuals, that are displaced, that have nowhere to go, and everyone's screaming out shelters. They should go to a shelter. Well, unless these things are being built brand new, do they have enough accommodations to be able to accommodate the number of people that's displaced? And that's just the current number. We're not even talking about the people that's still becoming homeless. Somebody's becoming homeless every day, right? Something's happening each and every day that's forcing somebody out of their home or their living quarters or situation and forcing them onto the streets, right? Some of it's decisions and choices, but some of it's just life itself. So do they have enough accommodations for all of that is the question and a concern of mine. And it says, in summary, while it is likely not legal to jail people simply for being homeless, the Grants Pass ruling allows for jailing people who refuse to stop camping. That's the play, camping in public spaces. The Trump administration's policy, paired with this recent Supreme Court precedent, creates a legal path to penalize homeless individuals who do not comply with encampment removals. So basically, to answer the question, is it legal? The answer is no, it is not legal to be able to discriminate or to be able to lock up or jail someone or present them with an ultimatum to go to shelter or jail just because they're homeless. However, there is some legal ramifications. There are some ways that we can kind of maneuver through this thing by still using the letter of the law and just making it seem as if they're camping, that's why they call them encampments, right? That they're camping. That is illegal based on the Grants Pass versus Johnson. This make this ultimatum that they're making. All right, so we've established the legalities of it. So the question that we have to ask next is it right? Is this just the right thing to do to offer humans an ultimatum such as this? Now, I want before you to answer, and please, 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 man, please, sir, make sure you guys drop in those comments what you think and what you feel, and I'll make sure that I address those things as well. But with that said, think about any type of situation where ultimatum has been offered and how well that tends to work, right? If you have a relationship and you're in that relationship with somebody and they say, hey, do this or else, how often does that work out well? It typically does not. All right. So when you're offering these people this, I get the push in the back. Some of them, they need it because of the fact that they have been displaced and homeless, or they suffer from mental illnesses or addiction for so long that just on their own, they're not going to want to conform or want to be able to get the help or the assistance that they need. So you have to kind of give them that forceful push in the back. I get it from that perspective. By the same token, is it really still the right thing to do? Because all of us still are citizens and we have rights and we should still have a choice. And the choice shouldn't necessarily be, red pill, blue pill, right? All right. So here's some of the arguments, and I brought these up in the last live, and I'll bring them back up again in this one for those who didn't watch it, or it's still actually is relevant to the conversation topic that we're having. So some of the pros that people brought up, saying that this is a good thing because of this, right? And they say that it reduces the crime rate. So most people believe that the homeless attribute to a great deal of crime in their areas. So there's a lot of people that are out on the streets. There's tents up. There's people that's homeless that don't have nothing to lose, and there seems to be a lot of crime in my community, in my neighborhood. So it seems logical that these are the individuals in whom are committing these crimes so that they can survive. So this is what people think. This is what they believe. Another thing is they believe that it makes the streets feel in the neighborhoods look and feel safer, right? So if you're walking your dog, if you're jogging down the street, if you're going for a walk, if you're pushing a stroller and you're spending some time with your family, if your kids riding their bike, you don't want to see tents up and people out there that's looking less than reputable individuals just hanging out and living on the streets. Of course, it's going to create a very eerie feeling for you, and I can understand that perspective. Also, a lot of people believe that it's going to provide opportunities for assistance and rehabilitation via various programs that these shelters offer. So most of the shelters, they offer substance abuse programs and sometimes placement programs, job placement, home placement, as far as finding you a home or credit rebuilding, I'm guessing, or just basic ways to be able to gradually be able to get you and push you back into society. Because just like a person that's been locked up for several years, even though they're living out there, it doesn't really mean that they understand how to integrate themselves back into society. Many of them have just lost over time. It's like almost evolved where they've lost a lot of the social skills, the ability to be able to communicate with people, and obviously and naturally a lot of the confidence as well of being able to be in a group of individuals who deemed to be normal. So these shelters, they offer a lot of positive programs to be able to help people make this transition. So these are some of the pros that people kind of brought up, about why they think that this might be good. This ultimatum is good for the people in the homeless community. Either go to a shelter or go to jail. All right. I have some rebuttals to that though. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. The homeless community are more likely to be victims of crimes than perpetrators of it. And I shared this in the last live that we had earlier this week, and it has some statistical data that's basically speaking to that. It says homeless individuals are more likely to be victims of crime than perpetrators, according to a 2020 U.S. Department of Justice study. When homeless individuals are arrested, it's often for survival crimes such as theft or violations of city ordinances prohibiting actions like sleeping on benches or public urination and things of that nature. So when we talk about is making the neighborhoods safer because it's going to bring the crime down, a lot of these individuals are really withdrawn from society. And I mean that to a point to whereas they're more afraid of you than you are of them, right? Because they're more likely to be to be victims of crime, to be the perpetrators of it. If somebody walks by and takes their stuff, which happens all the time, by the way, then what are they going to do? They're going to go to the police. I mean, honestly, a lot of people don't even look at these people as human beings, right? Let alone people with rights. Inside their own community, they're victimized all the time. They're beaten. I hear the women talk to the women. They're raped often, and things of that nature. And they're victims of crimes. And then several years ago, I remember there was this big thing trending on TikTok where there was young people that was trying to go viral that was walking up to homeless people and they were punching them in the face, so they can put it on social media, assaulting them. Well, who are they going to tell? Police going to actually open investigations for these people? And then some years ago, several years back, before this time, right, there was guys in the homeless community, going to the homeless community, killing people. Just kill them for sport, just because of the fact that nobody would miss them. The police wouldn't open any investigations up. Nobody really cared. So these are individuals when we talk about it's going to make our neighborhood safer. I don't really know if that's the case. I mean, there are some crimes that they're committing, as the studies show, for survival, some thefts and some things like that. But I don't know if that's going to necessarily be the case. And also, I believe that it masks the problem, but it doesn't address it or repair it. So it doesn't get to the root of it. Just like we read a little bit earlier, it doesn't get to the root of this. So when I start hurling ultimatums at people saying, "Hey, listen, you either gonna go to jail or you're gonna go to a shelter," it's like, okay, that's all fine and well. If I go to the shelter, all right, or if I go to jail, is it gonna actually help the situation? Like the next person that's getting ready to become homeless for whatever reason or another, it's not addressing it. I think that there's too much energy right now. Too much energy. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I don't take a political stance on this thing, so it's not about politics for me. It's not about anything else but humanity, right? I don't know if it's right or wrong, right? And this is a very difficult situation to be able to assess. It's definitely not doing any favors by keeping them out there, right? But when we start talking about using all this energy to be able to sweep them and push them and get them off the streets and things like that, then we're really not asking why. Why is this happening and why does it continue to happen? And not just why, but how. How do we stop it and prevent it from going any further or getting any worse? Period. We're not doing that. We're just spending money on all these troops that are going down. And remember, he just wants them out of DC, right? Because he doesn't want to see them. But that doesn't mean that he cares about resolving the problem altogether. And then, as the study, the skeptics said, and I agree to this, I don't believe that these shelters can accommodate this mass number of individuals. I think that they're, oversimplifying a very complicated situation. I don't believe that they have enough beds and food and resources. So that goes to the next thing is that it fails to force accountability regarding misappropriation of funds that are supposed to be designated for shelters and for the homeless community. So there's millions and even probably billions of dollars that are given each year to these various organizations, these soup kitchens, these shelters, and things like that. So how isn't it enough? How aren't we building these mega centers and compounds to where we can bring these people in, we can have medical treatment for them inside of that place, we can have all of the programs, the substance abuse programs, the job placement programs, the teach them how to interview, how to write resumes, how to budget money when they get back. How is all that stuff not, comprised in one mega place if there's all this money? Because they make these things so challenging and difficult to even be able to get in on a regular basis, because you either are too well off to be able to qualify for these programs or this assistance, or you're in such a bad position that you can't, right? But they have this little murky middle ground that they want you to be able to be in, because they want to make it as difficult as possible for these homeless people to be able to take advantage of this stuff, because they want to make sure that there's a surplus at the end of the quarter, so that way everybody can get bonuses, right? That's the reason why all these guys that have these fat checks and things like that. It just doesn't speak to the misappropriation of funds. There's more than enough money out there. The question is, why is it not being used for the purposes in which it's intended to be? So by just giving an ultimatum, go to shelter or go to jail, then you're letting these people off the hook, right? And a lot of these people are in politics and government, and they probably don't want to pull back those covers and see what's behind there. They want to, have some or feign some level of ignorance as relates to that as well. All right. So again, I hear the pros. I hear what people are saying. I think that it's good that they offer this ultimatum to these individuals, and just make sure that they either get off the streets or they go to jail because they're not listening and they're not complying. But let me explain something to you that's important too. As humans, we have a right to be able to make decisions. I've spoken to some of these people in the homeless community, asked them about these shelters, and I'll see them outside and I say, "Are you going in?" Because one of the places that we help out at is right outside of an outreach. And at a certain time, they have to line up in this long, long line, and they have to stand in this line. So then when they open the doors, they let them in, because they don't have adequate spacing and room to house everybody. So there's a cutoff. You only so many people that they can let in, only so many beds, only so much food. So I know that they don't have enough resources, in these places, unless they're building these things brand new, right? So with that said, I said, well, why aren't you going in? And, he kind of looked at me and he pretty much intimated that these people aren't very nice when you get inside of there. Now, I do understand that they see a lot of stuff and they deal with a lot of stuff, right? These homeless people are probably very aggressive at times, and because they're dejected, they might be verbally abusive. They might get physical at times with these people. I'm not here to be able to say, judge anybody and say, oh, this should be, you should have this type of attitude or whatever. But this guy basically made it seem like that when you go inside of there, it's pretty much like jail. The way that they treat you is almost like jail. They don't treat you well. They're not helpful. They're not really friendly. They're not cordial. They're not nice. And he's like, why would I want to purposely put myself in that position? And then again, they kick you out the next day anyway. So, at a certain time, everybody has to go out, and then you have to fight their way back in again that next day by getting in that line and fighting to get back in that next day. So it's not like that it's a permanent, situation that they're in until they get out of that homeless state, and then they have their own place. This is just a day-to-day thing. You sleep here, we'll feed you, we kick you out, and then if you make it in the next day, you get to do it again. So I can understand not wanting to be in a place that you feel like that you're not going to be treated well, or appreciated, or treated as less than a human. These are these people's job. They're being paid to be here, and then they're just not being especially nice or helpful. So I get it, and I can understand his perspective. But when we start talking about jail, that's scary, guys, because when you think about jail, we're thinking like, okay, they're going to have their own cell. They're going to have a bunk. They're going to get 3 square meals a day. There's a medical team, on staff there in case something happens. It's really not all that bad, because at least they're not on the streets. Well, you don't just magically end up in jail. So you don't just end up where you're on the streets and then you say, hey, I want to go to jail, and then you end up in jail. In order to get to jail, guys, you got to do what? You got to be arrested, right? You have to be arrested, right? And then when you get arrested and we start talking about jail, there's a lot that comes along with jail, guys. All right. Jail comes with more than just the meal and the bed. Jail comes with a criminal record. All right. So this is important for us to understand. So when we say go to a shelter or go to jail, jail comes with a criminal record. So you have to be arrested. You have to be fingerprinted. They have to take your picture and things like that. So now you are a criminal. So on top of you being homeless for whatever reason you're homeless, and then you not choosing to go to a shelter, you are now also a criminal. So what is the likelihood of you being able to realistically compete for a job in the workforce and be able to compete against a suitable candidate? Okay, so I have a couple candidates that I'm looking at. Okay, and when I'm looking at these people, I see this one person, probably a young individual, just in school or graduated school or whatever the case might be. This individual, they're well dressed, they're well kept, they've got references, they've got a current place of a residence, or a last resident, known resident. They have telephone number, they have all their documents and identification, they have everything they need. And now I have this guy over here who I want to give a chance to. I realize that life's been tough on him. It's been difficult for him. He doesn't have a last known place of a residence. He doesn't have his 5 or 6 references. He doesn't have any documents, but I really want to help him. But now after I do this background check, I find out this guy's a criminal as well. You know what I mean? So what's the likelihood? How is this helping people get back into the workforce by giving them a criminal record? That doesn't help at all, right? So to me, I think it's not good to be able to put people in these type of situations, because there's a lot that goes along with jail that people don't think about and they don't understand. Also, when we start talking about shelter or jail, and we start giving ultimatums, we don't understand that forced treatment will likely not work over a sustained period of time. Rehabilitation must be voluntary. So there's a lot of people saying, well, we need to force them because they're not going to help themselves. They're just not going to help themselves. So they need to be forced. And if they don't want to go to a shelter and be helped, then they just need to go to jail. So either be a criminal or go to a place where, they may be helpful. And I do agree to that extent that at times people procrastinate or they find any excuse, and they do need to be pushed. But by the same token, again, as we just expressed and we just discussed, not every place that you go to, these people aren't especially nice. The programs aren't always very helpful. And they're very difficult to make you jump through a lot of hoops to be able to get through these things and through these things, excuse me. So, it's just forcing somebody to do something over a sustained period of time. People will play the game. People will act as if they're going to go through with it to be able to appease people. But over a period of time, we don't know if this forced treatment is going to make a difference, because we have to remember that rehabilitation is a voluntary thing. You have to want to be better. You have to want to improve, kick that addiction or improve your way of life. I've spoken to some people who were homeless and they got out of that situation. They've left comments in our chats or our videos or on our polls, or just people that I've met in the community. And the biggest thing that they say is that it's something that you have to want to do. Dude, like, you have to want to do it. You got to want to pick yourself up and kick that addiction or whatever it is, and be able to just go out and do better and live a better life. Because if you don't want to, nobody's going to be able to force you to be able to do it. So I don't know if this is the right approach. So my question to you is this right, and is it fair? All right. So do you think that this is the right thing to be able to do? Please make sure that you drop a comment and let me know what you think. If you think that President Trump's approach of being able to provide an ultimatum to the homeless community, telling them they either go to a shelter or they go to jail, if you think this is the right thing to do. And before you do it, I want you to think about a few things. This is really important. That you have a lot of inherited things that's already, like, you already way ahead of the game. So when you look at people give advice, oftentimes they give advice from a certain place, not understanding that there's other people that are working from way further behind that's not even close to where you are, who the person is giving the advice, right? So if you watch a lot of YouTubers is a great example. They'll have these channels, and they'll say, if you're a small channel, do this. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you were able to do these things with your thumbnails or with your content or whatever, but you've got 100,000 subscribers. You probably make it, your channel is definitely monetized, which, by the way, ours isn't. And that's okay. And you have a steady stream of income coming in to where you can actually invest in great editing software, in paying people to be able to do A, B, C, and D. So you're speaking from an elevated position. It's easy to say these things, but it's harder for somebody who might just be starting to their YouTube journey to be able to actually to do, right? Easy to say. What about people who are wealthy individuals, and they're always trying to give advice on finances, on credit and things like that? Now, granted, I wouldn't want any type of advice from a person that's not a successful YouTuber, for example, or somebody that isn't wealthy, somebody that's broke, right? That's not going to be helpful. You're going to look at them and say, well, you're in no better position than me. How are you offering, advice? I get it. But when they offer the advice, a lot of times they're offering it from a position to whereas they are financially stable. So it's easier to be able to say these things. So when you're speaking, I want you to think about this. It doesn't matter what your financial status or situation is right now. I'm going to say something, and I want you to reflect on this before you answer whether or not you think this is the right approach or not. All right. Number one, having four walls and electricity provides a huge advantage, and you have that, right? So you have four walls and electricity, you have a huge advantage. Now, what do you mean four walls and electricity? Well, if you have a roof over your head, you're going to be able to be able to lay down and have a decent night's worth of sleep. Not worried about people walking by, not worried about people stealing your stuff, not worried about some of those crimes I talked about earlier, about being attacked or about being raped or about being robbed or stolen from, right? So that's one bonus. Electricity, right? So if you're talking about being able to go out and get a job, so you go out and you apply for jobs, right? You're going to need a place to be able to charge your phone. So a lot of these people, they have Obama phones, right? But they don't have anywhere to charge these phones at. So they when they apply for things online, or they go into places to try to apply for different jobs, if someone calls them, they can't take that phone call. If someone texts them, they can't take that text, right? If they have to actually go on their phone or on the internet to be able to do things to apply, because you have to do that for every single thing right nowadays. Nothing's impersonal and face to face anymore. Everything is go online, download this app, and apply here. They don't have an opportunity to do that. But if you got four walls and you got electricity, you have an ability to be able to do that. You have a place where you can, obviously eat. You're able to wash your clothes. You're able to do all of these things. And these individuals aren't able to be able to do that. So I want you to think about that advantage that you already have when we're asking, do we think this is right and this is fair? And I want you guys to drop a comment and let me know if you believe that this ultimatum that Trump is giving is right and is it fair, right? Because it pushes people into a particular box or situation. And then when they are trying to rehabilitate their lives, the question is, what space are they in then? Go to a shelter or go to jail. All right. Those are your options, right? And if I choose going to that shelter and I'm not being treated well, they don't have the resources that they're making it seem like that they have, right? Even a lot of the analysts are skeptical about it. Then it's like being in jail. Or I don't want to go to a shelter for whatever reason or another, so now I have to go to jail. So when I go to jail, I now have a criminal record. When I get out of jail and then I'm trying to look for gainful employment, I'm unable to because of the fact that I have a criminal record now, and I don't have a lot of those built-in advantages that I just talked about that we have by just having a home, having electricity, running water, and things of that nature. I think that people trivialize homelessness too much all the time. They always talk about just go get a job, go get a job, go get a job. And I'm like, it's not that simple. Why isn't it that simple? Well, they can just go get a job holding up a sign. So I don't understand why they can't at least do that. Well, first of all, if we look at it, there's thousands of homeless people. All right. There isn't necessarily thousands of jobs available for people who are less than suitable candidates. But here's some of the reasons, and I talked about this in one of my other lives before, why homeless people don't have a job. Because if you just look at the things that's necessary to secure a job in 2025, then I mean, my goodness, they're disqualified right off the bat. So the application process, right? Their need identification, right? They're disqualified. Many of them have lost their ID years ago, or if they do have it, it's expired, right? Social security card, that's gone. Employment history, birth certificate, references, all of these things, just to be able to get a job that's maybe pays $10 an hour. You need all those things, and many of them, they don't have them. So when we try to trivialize it and make it seem like it's as easy as all that to just go get a job and not be homeless, and a lot of these people that's in the homeless community, they have jobs. I'll talk to these people, they do have jobs. They just don't have enough money to be able to work out of that significant hole that they're in to be able to get to where you and I am at, where we have those four walls and we have the electricity, right? So that's why we have an inherited advantage that's a lot much further along than them. Even if we end up on the same plane as them today, where we're both unemployed, even if you force into homelessness today, you still have the playing field is still not even level because you're still so much further ahead of them based on all the things that you have, the people that you know, the things that you have accumulated and things like that than them. So I want us to consider that when we're answering that question. Is it right, or do we believe that it's fair? So I want to thank you guys for joining in today for our topic. Make sure you guys drop that comment, please. I will definitely address any comments that you guys drop, whether it's positive or negative. I'll respond. I'll address it in some form or fashion. But we are living in a very unique and interesting time, and it's scary because some of these things that's happening, transpiring, is borderline infringing upon our institutional rights, right? And I fear, one of my fears is that after this homeless situation is never going to be over, but after this is no longer the focal point, what else is this going to spill over to, about such aggressive measures being taken to be able to for them to be able to get their way, whatever their decision that they're making, or whatever they want to make it about. Like, if you're able to infringe upon people's constitutional rights right now who really don't have a voice, then it's kind of scary where it may go from here. So that's one of my concerns as well. But again, I think that this is really difficult to be able to balance. I don't think that there is one particular correct approach to this. I don't believe that there is necessarily a right or a wrong either. It's kind of very touchy, right? So there's pros to this, there's cons to it. I get both sides of it, and I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. All right. So once again, thank you guys for joining in, and see you in a minute. Peace.